streaming. All right, so here you go. Link in the chat. Again, mute yourself here on Zoom, and then I'll see you on YouTube. And just put your name in as usual. Test. Hey, Jordan, we're on YouTube. Link in the chat.
All right, cool. I'm on my way.
I'm on my way. Test. Yep, cool. All right, first things first. Jeff, what's up? Just make sure you can hear me on YouTube. Make sure that my audio is coming out okay so that you guys can hear me. I'm going to check on my end too, but it would be great if you let me know so that I don't go on talking forever. And it's actually, yeah, all right, cool. So you should be able to hear me. Here we go. So let's just go over some simple stuff today, stuff that won't take too long, so hopefully you guys can get to work pretty soon. So in Ableton, we haven't really talked too much about routing. We've kind of touched on it, but there isn't really a lot to say. But that being said, I kind of wanted to reiterate it just so that you guys have that awareness. So when you have a track, like an audio track, you see that there's an audio from section and an audio to section, as well as a monitor section. Now, I've gone over this before, but just to kind of like re-emphasize it, the audio from is like your inputs. So when you're in Pro Tools and you're looking at a track, you have inputs and outputs. So the audio from is like your inputs, right? So your input says it's an external interface. The input is set to whatever you choose. And you can see that as I talk, signal shows up on that input. Now, obviously, the monitor is for if you want to hear what you're recording or what you're monitoring. But because I have this already going through my direct input or my direct monitoring, there's no point in me hitting these buttons right now. Because if I do, you're going to hear two of me at the same time, right, with some delay. And that's because there is a time difference or latency between when the audio gets converted into the DAW. And then you have the audio to, which says basically that this is going to a master, right? So right now the master track is over here, and that's where this track is being routed. So let's just take a really quick example of, say, if we had some basic vocals going like, hey, 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 hey. Oh, gotta hit record. Hey. Do that again. Hey. Right. Now, let's do another track. Audio track. And let's record another one. Hey. Oh, wrong record enable. Input 3. Hey. I wish I could do harmonies better, bruh. Hey, Charles, we're on YouTube. Link in the chat.
All right.
So what have we got? Let's do another one. Hey. That's right. Hey. 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 Let's do that. Record enable this one over here. Change the input. Hey. Right? So there, we got like these terrible, terrible group vocals, but group vocals nonetheless. Let's add some reverb to spice it up and make me sound less shitty. right? So suppose we have some group vocals, right? Let's call this vocal 1, 2, 3, 4. Just to do it really quick, I'm just going to call them V1, V2, V3, and V4, right? So suppose I wanted to put these into some type of a group, right? You can do that by just clicking on one of the tracks, holding Shift, clicking on the last track so that they're all selected, and then if you press Command G, it creates what's called a group in Ableton. Now you can see that when you look at the individual vocal tracks, at the bottom, the audio 2 has now changed to the first group, or this, right? So I can rename this Vox group, and you can see that the audio 2 is going to the Vox group, which means all of these individual vocals are being sent to the group vocals. Now the cool thing is that on the group vocals, you can condense it down so that you're only looking at one group, and then you can send the entire group to a reverb or delay. You can pan the entire group, and you can even add plugins to the entire group, just like you would in Pro Tools, right? So let me just re-emphasize that. Hey, Justin, we're on YouTube. Link in the chat.
All right, cool.
So, for example, you got vocals 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're all going to a vocal group. Now, vocal 1, maybe you say, hey, I want to add an EQ onto that. So you go to your audio effects, and you say, go to EQ, EQ8. So now you've loaded EQ8 onto V1. But if I go to V2, it's not there, right? All the other vocals are pretty much the same. So you can load different plugins on the individual tracks as well as a different plugin on the group track, just like you would subgroups in Pro Tools, right? So you can have a compressor on the subgroup and EQs on the individual ones. You can also send individually or by the group, right? Individual sends, group send. So pretty simple. If you guys understood the subgrouping in Pro Tools, then this isn't really that complicated. Now, if you want to ungroup them, you can. Shift Command G is the option. So now they're back to where they were, and the audio 2 is going to the master, right? Another thing that you can do, if you want to set it up in the traditional way, like the way that we did in Pro Tools, you can do it like that. A simple way to set something like that up is to actually create an audio track and call it vocal group. And what you can do now is all these tracks, you can then audio to vocal group like that. So now, if you hit play, you're only hearing the reverb because even though it's sending to vocal group, remember that this is an audio track. So in order to actually hear it, you have to record enable and input monitor. But I obviously did not want that. There you go. So because all these individual audio tracks are outputting to the Vox group audio track, they all get sent to this track, so you don't have to assign another external input. So I set the input to nothing. But now if I record enable an input monitor, then actually I don't even have to record enable. Right? So you have this kind of almost like a workaround subgroup. So this is like doing it if you wanted to do it in the way that we did it in Pro Tools. But that's basically how you would do it. It's just a lot easier in Ableton, I feel, because there's no input-output busing confusion. It's all like, hey, where does it need to go? Oh, there? Cool. Audio to master or audio from this. It's a lot simpler in my opinion. So that being said, let's open up that last thing we did a few days ago. All right, so we got something like this. Now you might have noticed that when you have a drum track or a drum instrument loaded onto your MIDI track, right? This guy. You might or might not have noticed that this drum track has kick drums, bass drums, kick drums, snare drums, bass, all that kinds of stuff. But if you look up on the track, there's a little downward arrow right here. So if you click on it, you'll notice that all the individual drum components are listed. So this is actually a group. Technically, this is a group, right? You open it up, and there it is. Those are all your individual, right? You got bass drum, rim shot, snare. So if I hit play...
Yo, Jeet, I can't hear you.
We're on YouTube, dude. The link is in the chat. I'm not sure if you can... If you're on YouTube, you should be able to hear me. If you can't hear me on YouTube, then you can leave Zoom and just watch the YouTube and come back to Zoom afterwards.
Yeah, nah, I can hear you on Zoom now.
No, but we're on YouTube is what I'm saying.
I mean, yeah, that's what I meant.
All right, cool. All right, so this is technically a group, and you can even see that, you know, if I call this drum instrument, you can see that, or whatever. You can see that kick, bass drum, rim shot, snare, all these individual ones. If you look at the audio too, they're all going to that 909 core kit track, which is like a mix bus, or it's like a subgroup to the drums. And if I hit play, right, you can solo the kicks and all the individual things, right? So some of you may or may not have noticed it and might have been wondering, wow, it would be great if I could have individual control over the drums so I can mix the kick drum, snare drum, hi-hat, however I want to, right? Well, now you can, right? If you're like, oh, I want the snare to be louder, or if you want to pan the hi-hat, or if you want to send just the snare to the reverb, you see the sends are located down here. Why is that not doing anything? Oh, there it is. So it's a subgroup reverb. You get the idea. All right. So that way you can have individual mixes, individual stems to mix your drum tracks, and it's usually applicable to all these instruments that have multiple samples at the same time, right? This is like bass, snare. Another example would be like maybe synths that have multiple layers to them, or any kind of multi-sample instrument. So that's basically how you would do some simple routing in Ableton. It's not that complicated, but what I want to show you next is, let's just record this really quick into the arrangement view. All right? So hitting record records everything onto the arrangement view. Now, if you want to hear it, you have to hit this little red button, right, to engage the timeline. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. Boom, boom. All right, so suppose this is like my song or something, right? And if I want to export this, the first thing that I always do is I set my loop brace up so that it it basically determines where the start and end of the song is, right? Sometimes I extend it a little bit further in case there's like a reverb tail or something. But there you go. You first select the region that you want to actually export. But then you go to File, you go to Export. Now here's the thing. By default, you're going to be exporting the master, right? And you're saying render start point is the first bar, render length is 19 bars. That's what I've selected. And then all you need to do is make sure that you have the right file format, which is usually WAV. Choose your bit depth accordingly. If you want an MP3, you can add an MP3 by just turning this on. And then once you hit export, you choose where you want it to go. Let's say in this case, I want it to go here, right? Bounces. And that's going to create a bounce of the file. Now, when you're composing music, you might want to do stems, right? Hey, dude, we are on YouTube. Link is in the chat. Hope you heard that. So if you wanted to get the individual stems of this, what you would do is you would go to export audio video again, but this time instead of rendering out the master, you want to render all individual tracks. So that way, each single track is going to be exported as its own audio file. So if I do this, and then I create a folder called stems, and I put that in here. Now let's go find it. All right, so these are the two WAV file bounces. So that's like the bounce of the entire song. So if I play this, it's going to be the full song, right? But if you go into the stems folder, you see how it's still exporting stuff right now. So it's still working on it. Should be over in about 10, no, not even. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, okay. If you go into the stems, you'll see that all the individual tracks are here as well. Now, because I selected MP3, each of them has an MP3 with them. Now, when you're creating stems, you should never do MP3s. Why? Because when you're creating stems, you're usually doing it to send for mixing. And for mixing, you only want WAV files. But now you see that you have all the individual tracks. The cool thing about Ableton, it also gives you the option to bounce out the reverb by itself as well, or the delay by itself. Right? So, for example, piano, guitar, right? So it's really, really quick and easy to get stems out of Ableton. So I think that's really cool. All right. So now I want to go into a little bit of automation. You guys already know what automation is, so I'm not going to give you the whole lecture on that. I just want to show you how to do it in Ableton. There's actually two ways to perform automation, right? You can perform automation on the arrangement view, just like you would any other like DAW, like Pro Tools or Logic or whatever. But you can also perform automation on the individual clips, which I think is one of the coolest things. So for example, let's take piano. All right, so suppose we have this loop, right? And we have a copy of them, and I'm just going to call this piano loop 1, and I'm going to call this piano loop 2. So you have the same loop, just copied over. These two are exactly the same, right? Now check this out. If I go to piano loop 2 and I load it up over here, then if I go to this tab over here, right? So right now, all these things are like the clip parameters. So we've already talked about like, you know, warping and pitch changing and gain, right? So if I play the second loop and I change the pitch, it's going to change the pitch of the clip, right? Or the gain, right? So I'm going to turn off the delay for now. So you have these clip parameters, but right over here, there's another tab where you see a line and 2 dots. That is the universal sign for automation. So if you click on that, you'll see that you're in automation mode, or rather automation view. Now, let me just make this a little bit easier to see. Now, there's 2 ways to apply automation on a clip, right? You can either automate clip values or mixer values, and obviously plugin values as well. So I should say 3. Clip values are things like we just talked about, like gain, pitch, right? So if I go to clip, and remember, in this particular case, the automation is referred to as envelopes. I already talked about what envelopes are, but they're basically shapes that determine how parameters act, right? So it's essentially automation because things are happening without you manually doing things. They're called automation in the clip view, but it's essentially automation. Now what you can do is you can say choose clip gain and change the clip gain. So now if I hit this piano loop 2, right? Now you see how there's a blue dot next to the clip gain now, because it's following this blue automation lane, right? It's going down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down. So the blue dot just indicates that automation is being performed in real time. You can do that with pitch as well, right? Oh, sorry guys. You can do that with pitch. So instead of gain, you can do transpose. Right? And you can see it there. It's not extreme enough, but you can. Right? So whenever there's that movement, it's affecting the automation of the clip, right? That's clip value automation. But you can also do mixer value automation. Now, you guys already know what mixer value automation is, right? That's like level of the track, sends on the track. So say, fine, delay, right? If I'm choosing mixer parameters and I'm choosing delay, what I can do is I can do my little automation point here. And now you see how as I drew it, a red dot appeared on the parameter? That's because when I play the clip now, right? So the red dot means that there's mixer parameter automation in play. You can do that for panning. Right? Now here's the cool thing. This automation, even though it's mixer parameter and clip parameters that are being changed, it's only being applied on this clip. Watch what happens. Remember, this is an exact copy of this. But if I flip over, it's going to play the original sample. No automation at all. All the dots have disappeared, right? Because there is no automation happening. But the other one has automation on it. So that's the really cool thing about Ableton, is that you can apply automation on the individual clips separately. I think that's unbelievably powerful. Obviously, you can also do plugin parameter automation. So if you have the flanger, you can say something like, yeah, sure, dry wet. So instead of being 100% wet, you can start dry, and then raise it. Maybe do that. Right? You can hear the flanger coming in. And if you don't believe me, look at the parameter over here. Right? But if I go back to the other loop, everything's set. No automation happening at all. So very, very, very powerful tool in Ableton is individual clip automation, right? So you can even do this, like say, you can get some cool stuff if you do some insane, what is it? Pitch shifting, right? Like, can go crazy over here. I love that. Yo, I fucking love it. Yo, I love it. This thing is so freaking powerful, man. Right? Obviously, you also have all your mixer parameters as well, and your plugin parameters. So you can have like that delay thing, right? So suppose delay is always down. So this can go up. Oop. Boom. Nope. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do. Actually, let's. Okay, let's do this one. Be more audible. So you can also actually make curves in the parameters too, in the automation lanes too. So if you hover over a line like this and it turns blue, and you hold Option, you can then bend the automation curve. I wish Pro Tools had that. It's so cool. Right? Fucking dope. So yeah, very, very powerful. And again, that's just on this one clip. Now, if you want to do automation, just like regular, Pro Tools kind of automation that you guys are familiar with, suppose you have everything recorded here. Right? If you want to see the automation lanes in the arrangement view, all you need to do is go up here, click on this, and you see all the automation lanes that you need. Now, the coolest thing about Ableton, remember in Pro Tools how if you wanted to automate something, you had to like do Control, Option, Command, click, and then enable automation, and then it would show up at the bottom for you to mess around with. With Ableton, it's not like that. They're like, you know what? We're going to assume that you want to automate anyway, so we're going to say everything is automation enabled, and you just move the fucking thing and it'll automate. So, for example, if you take your drums, you can see that there's mixer parameters that you can change, like your mute, volume, pan, and the sends. But there's also all these other parameters. Literally every single thing about the instrument, the virtual instrument, can be changed, right? Let's see what the bass drum, if there is anything that can change. Device on, device off, tune. Let's see what this does. Yeah. Hear that? Hear that the kick drum is going down in pitch. Now it's going up, going down. You hear that? So you can change pitch of the kick drum. Let's do that with snare too. Dun, down. Oh, maybe it's the wrong snare. Is it a rim shot? Oh, I'm on the wrong one. Oh yeah, there you go. Oh, 25 cents? That's nothing, bro. All right. Maybe I choose a different parameter, like detune. How about that? You got to find that line again. There it is. Maybe that's not a good example. But the idea is that everything about the instrument, like over here, every single parameter can be changed, right? So if you have bass drum, all these things can be changed. Snare drum, all these things can be changed, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so why didn't that work? Let's find out why that didn't work. Snare drum, tune. Yeah. Right? So you can change tuning in real time. This is just how you guys used to do in Pro Tools, right? Pretty standard. Oh, by the way, if you have an automation that's going on a track and you like completely want to get rid of it, it's Command Delete. Kind of resets everything back to normal. Obviously, you also have mixer parameters, so you already know about mixer parameters. So like volume, right? Boom, boom, boom. You see that when you play this, the volume changes. Obviously, the red dot is on the mixer parameter, the volume, because that's what's being automated, right? And you can do that with basically any track. Any parameter that's available, you can automate. It's very, 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 very powerful, right? Now, the final thing I'll say about Ableton that's really, really powerful, Ableton automation in particular, is that you can record all these things in real time. So let's just say I wanted to run through the track and I wanted to do automation while the track is playing. To do that, you can click on this little button over here called Automation Arm. And then when you actually start recording, I'm sorry, I hit play. When you start recording, it records all the automation that you're doing. Right? Right? So you can see that all these things are moving in real time, and the thing that makes it the most fun is once you start assigning all these different things to knobs on a control surface. So for example, if I was like, okay, I want let's see. I want, guitar delay over here. I want piano delay over here. I want glide delay over here. Right, and then I want guitar pen over here. Right. So now if you assign all these knobs, it just gets really fun because now have automation arm on, hit record. Can do multiple automations at the same time if you have everything assigned to a key. It gets really, really fun. And I already explained how it's so easy to map your parameters onto knobs. It's really, really cool. Well, I think so. So that essentially is automation. Yeah. It's not really much to say because you already know what automation is. So how about let's take it back to Zoom. I know that was short, but still.